We all know that in Dune, one of the key skills of the Fremen is riding the big sandworms, but have you ever watched these scenes and wondered, wait, how do they control whether the sandworm approaches them in a way they can ride, or if the sandworm will come from directly below them and eat them? Well, this was actually indirectly addressed in the movie itself. We see that when they want to get rid of the Harkonnen scouts, they pile them at the bottom of a dune next to some huge rocks, so that the sandworm has no other option to attack but go directly up, which was also the case in Dune Part 1. However, whenever they want to ride a sandworm, they place it on top or on the side of a sand dune, so instead of going directly up, they are forced to attack from the side and continue moving forward, which enables them to ride the worms. And many people similarly wondered how the Fremen get off the sandworms, to which Denis Villeneuve responded,
I hope I will have the chance to show how in the next movie, because I'm really proud of the idea. It's going to be beautiful.
So in today's video, I'll be showing you more hidden details just like this that I found while watching Dune Part 2. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. The first thing I noticed a lot in this movie was that some of the camera angles, especially near the start of the film, stays really close to the land and moves up and down the slopes of the dune. This brings to life the dialogue in the first movie where Chani mentioned
rolling over the sands, you can see spice in the air.
And we see a lot of those shots where the camera is literally rolling over the sand dunes. Soon after, we are introduced to Drax the Destroyer, Rabah Harkonnen, who is now tasked with overseeing the spice production on Arrakis, and when he bashes this guy's head on the table, we can see the holographic display is also affected by each impact, which may not seem significant at first, but you have to remember that this holographic display is obviously computer generated and not there in real life, so the VFX artists also went to the extra lengths of making small attention to detail such as this one. Next up, when Paul becomes a Fedaykin and is given the name Usul and chooses the name Muad'Dib, notice how Chani reacts to this. At first, she was on board with Paul being named after the desert mouse, but as soon as Stilgar mentioned how the star that points the way is also called Muad'Dib, which leads Paul one step closer to becoming the Lisan al-Gaib that Chani refuses to believe in, she then continues to never call him Muad'Dib. Instead, she calls him by the name the Fremen chose and only ever says Usul.
I don't believe you, Usul. Usul, I'm here.
A great attention to detail to her character and how she believes in no messiah. Soon after, when Paul learns to ride a sandworm, you may recall that Shai-Hulud creates ripples in the sand before its attack. And although it's too far away to be seen, the editor still added in the sound of it to indicate that it is still happening. Later on in the film, when Paul sees a vision of an explosion and Chani being affected by the radiation, he wakes up to realise that it is happening in real life, and the first thing he does when he reaches Chani is check her face, because he was afraid that his vision just became true. Moving on to much later in the film, when Paul is arriving at the temple, we get this shot of the crowd and notice how the focal length of this lens is changing, so it creates a blurring movement from the front towards the back of the crowd, just as it is recreating the effect of someone passing through the crowd. Cutting to inside the temple, we see Paul denying the Fremen traditions to stand up as the one pointing the way. In the first film, Leto Atreides stated,
"We are House Atreides. There is no call we do not answer. There is no faith that we betray."
Yet Paul is here betraying Fremen faith for control, which implies that he has embraced his Harkonnen heritage.
So this is how I will survive. By being Harkonnen.
On top of his Atreides and Bene Gesserit bloodlines to rise up among the ranks of the Fremen. There's something I've noticed a lot during this film as well. Most movies and media use J-cuts. These are simple cuts where the audio and video overlap so that you can hear the audio of the next footage before it's even shown, making that J shape in the editor. I use this a lot in my own videos, and so do many other content creators, as it's a natural way to bring two parts together and equally cuts down the overall length of your content. But this film in particular uses a lot of exaggerated L cuts for a lot of the main scenes. This is opposite to a J cut, where the audio of the current footage can still be heard while the next clip has already started playing, which can be seen used in a lot of scenes, such as when Rabah has a freak out.
Kill them all! Rush!
When Feyd-Rautha goes to Arrakis, and also when Paul rises up as the Lisan al-Gaib. This is a really effective way of making those powerful moments last and leaving that intimidating effect in the film where the impact of what just happened can still be heard and felt throughout the next moments of the movie. And speaking of the music, whenever we get a scene of the Emperor's planet, it is always quiet with no music.
You'd be a formidable empress.
This reminds us how the Emperor is living unaffected by the events of Arrakis until he goes there, because as soon as his ship enters the atmosphere, that is when we finally get a score for the Emperor, and he now has music in every other scene after this, representing how coming to Arrakis was what brought him into the story. Now there's a detail you can actually find in the soundtrack of the film itself, as in the first film, when the Sandworm is on screen for the first time, we get its theme being this motif.
Bless the coming and going of him. May his passage cleanse the world.
And the same theme is heard when Paul rides the Sandworm. But something interesting is that the Sandworms are considered a god to the people of Arrakis with the name Shai Hulud. And later in Dune Part 2, you can hear the same theme of Shai Hulud adapted into a new score in both Arrival and You Fought Well. This is a very subtle indication that Paul has replaced Shai Hulud and stepped up to a more godlike status on Arrakis. Moving on to later in the movie, this isn't really a detail, but something I absolutely adored was how they used the thumpers and overlapped them to create a battle chant. That's just amazing creativity from the team. Whoever thought of this and the delayed music for the ornithopter explosion deserves a raise. But speaking of battle chants, about halfway through the film, Paul gets a vision from Jamis guiding him.
The good hunter always climbs the highest dune before his hunt. He needs to see as far as he can see.
And so just before his war with the Emperor, what he does is climb the highest mountain in the valley to a position where he is above everyone else, including the Emperor. And another cool continuity detail is that he doesn't just climb a dune for this, obviously. He climbs a cliff, which resembles what his family's castle is built on back home in Caladan. So again, he's still representing the Atreides in his war for the Fremen. Another way he does this is in the end of the movie when about to duel Feyd-Rautha. He salutes him with his knife, which is what the Atreides do before a duel, as he also wishes that his wife, that his wife chips and shatters. As he also wishes that his knife chips and shatters, which is what a Fremen says before a duel. But lastly, the finale of this movie ends in a direct parallel to the opening of the first movie. In Dune Part 1, it opens with Chani looking up at the oppressors of her people, aka the Harkonnens, leaving Arrakis, but now she looks up to her own people, leaving Arrakis to fight the oppressors. And that wraps up my breakdown for Dune Part 2. If you did enjoy this video, please do leave a like down below, and a sub to the channel would be much appreciated for more breakdowns just like this one, and I shall see you guys in the next one.